Phil didn't even look up when he slid my laptop to the side like it was trash on his desk. "We'll handle the client pitch, Brian. Not your lane, not my lane." I'd been grinding on that proposal since January. 12-hour days, weekends, even worked through bronchitis in March. Missed my niece's birthday, canceled a vacation. And now Phil and Tony, the same two clowns who couldn't read a data flowchart without getting confused, were walking into that boardroom with my work like they'd dreamed it up over coffee. Quick note, before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from? I watched them walk down the hallway carrying the printed pitch decks I built from scratch, only now they were scrubbed clean. My name was gone from the slides. The footers still had BT-V 9.3 on a few pages, but that was it. One slip. Should have caught it. They didn't even thank me. Just hijacked it and walked off like they owned the place. Tony gave me a wink on his way in. Phil didn't even glance back. I sat there at my desk, eyes locked on the conference room door, gut twisted. Couldn't even look at the screen in front of me. My fingers were still resting on the keyboard like I might keep working, but I wasn't. I couldn't. And I didn't throw a fit, didn't stand up and make a scene. Just nodded once, like some beaten-down office pet, and went back to reviewing numbers while they pitched my plan like it came out of their brains. That was the moment it clicked for me. Really clicked. They were never going to hand me the keys. Didn't matter how many years I had, how clean my work was, how many problems I solved. As long as I stayed quiet and useful, I'd stay invisible. Well, that was the last time I let someone else walk into a room with my work and take the credit. I'm Brian Tanner, I'm 42. I live in Kansas City, and that moment changed everything. I opened a blank spreadsheet, scrolled past the pitch file I'd built, and started writing down every single thing I'd done for the project. Dates, file names, notes, call logs. If they were going to play games with my work, fine. I was done playing fair. I didn't start at Creighton looking for trouble. I just wanted a job where the work mattered and the numbers added up. 2 years back, I walked in as a systems optimization consultant with 15 years under my belt. Manufacturing flow, cold storage redesigns, data load balancing. I'd seen it all. The Darren Freight contract was already this white whale hanging over the company. $9.5 million on the table, and no one could land it. They'd thrown 5 project teams at it before I even got there. All smoke, no fire. Melissa was my direct boss. Mid-40s, clean blazers, clipped tone, smart, no question. She gave me the full backlog of failed attempts and said, "See if you spot anything." I did. 3 weeks in, buried in a pile of raw warehouse telemetry from a pilot site in Missouri, I noticed something off in the temperature sync logs. Looked like a rounding issue at first, but then I traced it back and found the core problem, a lag in cross-node communication between cold zones and dispatch that was slowing the whole damn network down. I calculated the loss. Just under $3.9 million a year. All from a glitch no one thought to check. Melissa actually looked stunned when I showed her. She stared at the printout, tapped it twice, then said, "That's the missing piece." We were off. She told me, "We'll build this together." So, I got to work, redesigned the entire flow model, built a full implementation roadmap that covered every single site in their network, 32 in total. Mapped out capital outlay, maintenance phases, integration risks, timelines. I even drafted the encryption and transmission protocols so nothing got lost in translation. I did all of it, nights, weekends, just like before. And Melissa, she checked in once a week. "How's it coming?" Then disappeared until next Friday. Fine, I didn't need hand-holding. I just wanted a seat at the table. The final plan was a monster. 3 phases, 37 deliverables, projected to save Darren Freight close to $5.5 million in the first 18 months. I handed it off to Melissa in a deck with a version log and a full summary memo. She looked at it for maybe 10 minutes, said, "It's solid. We'll clean it up for the pitch." I figured we meant we. Next day, she stopped by my desk with this tight smile on her face and said, "You're benched for the presentation." I blinked. "What?" She leaned down, lowered her voice. "Phil wants senior leadership in the room. Says it'll look better. It's optics, Brian." I didn't say anything right away. Just sat there, staring at the folder in my hand with all the notes I'd just printed. She touched the edge of my desk and said, "Next time, okay?" Right. I didn't yell. Didn't ask what kind of manager lets their team get iced out of their own work. I just nodded once, then shut my laptop. Next time. That's what they always say when they want you quiet but compliant. They needed the results. They just didn't want me in the picture when they delivered them. So I started building something else, something for myself. Quietly, carefully, one receipt at a time. By the time they were printing the decks, I already knew I wasn't in the room. Again, didn't matter. I still pulled the all-nighter, tightened every slide, fixed 3 formatting issues Melissa didn't even notice, restructured the timeline summary, so even a half-distracted exec could follow it. But I left one thing out, the adaptive routing algorithm. It was the heart of the whole system, the reason the proposal worked instead of just sounding smart. Without it, they had a solid plan with no execution layer. Like pitching a GPS app without showing how it finds the fastest route. Only I knew how it worked. It lived in my notes, not the deck. At 10 that morning, Melissa stopped by with a neutral smile. "Stay available during the pitch?" "Just in case?" "Sure, just in case." I nodded without looking at her and went back to checking logs that didn't need checking. She left without another word. Through the glass, I watched the Darren freight team file in like they owned the building. 3 guys in tailored jackets, a woman in a navy pantsuit with a hard stare, and a tech rep with a thick laptop bag. That had to be their IT lead. Melissa stood next to Phil like a stagehand trying to look important. He did his usual fake warm handshake routine, or probably dropped a line about how we're not just vendors, we're partners. I sat at my desk, still, calm on the outside, burning underneath. 20 minutes in, I could see it falling apart. Melissa leaned forward twice, flipping through slides like maybe she could find an answer on the next page. Phil's face had gone red around the ears. The tech guy leaned over and whispered something to the woman in the pantsuit, Carla, I'd later learn, and she crossed her arms, not impressed. 40 minutes in, Phil got up to pour water. Melissa's hands were shaking. Carla pointed at the screen. She wanted specifics, real ones. That's when my screen lit up. Conference room, now, just like that. I stood up, slow, grabbed a pen, not because I needed it, just to have something in my hand, and walked toward the room like I belonged there. No one said a word when I opened the door. Carla turned in her seat, eyebrows raised. Phil forced a smile that looked like it hurt his face. "This is Brian Tanner, one of our data guys." He helped support some of the back-end modeling. I walked in and sat at the table, not off to the side. At the table. I didn't say anything. I waited. Carla looked right at me. "Mr. Tanner, can you explain how your team plans to handle integrity loss during multi-node routing?" She wasn't smiling. I met her eyes. "The algorithm's not in the deck because it wouldn't make sense without context. I designed it myself. I can walk you through it." Phil opened his mouth. I kept going. "I built a 9-step logic chain with live redundancy fallback. The system prioritizes node stability, not just signal speed, and syncs every 10 seconds across 3 verification channels. If a node flags out of range, it reroutes based on pre-mapped load estimates, not just last known values." Carla's tech guy started nodding. She raised a hand and said, "Go on." So I did. I broke down the sublayer validation, explained the sync intervals, showed how we tested it against their existing logs and beat their best case metrics by 23%. Melissa stared at the table. Phil didn't say a word. When I finished, Carla closed her binder, looked at Phil. "Why wasn't Mr. Tanner leading this pitch?" He blinked. Nothing. 5 minutes later, Melissa walked up. She didn't say anything right away. Then, "You handled that well." I didn't answer. She shifted her weight. "Look, Phil, he handles the executive side. I didn't know she was going to ask that. Doesn't matter," I said. "I was ready." Melissa's jaw tightened. "This isn't how we normally handle client presentations." "No," I said, standing. "It's how I handle mine." She blinked like she didn't know what to say to that. I didn't give her the chance. I walked past her and went straight to the break room, poured black coffee with a hand that didn't shake, let the burn settle in my throat. That wasn't luck. That wasn't timing. That was me stepping in when the room was on fire and putting it out with the same tools they tried to hide. They'd brought me in to do the work. Now they knew I could finish it. I didn't even finish my coffee before the HR invite hit my inbox. Subject, conduct review time, 4:30 p.m., no notes, no explanation. Just the calendar block, like I was some intern who got caught stealing staplers. Fine. I spent the next 3 hours pulling receipts. Every version of the algorithm, every email thread, all the shared doc logs with my name stamped on every last change. Time cards, Git commits, Slack exports. Melissa and Phil hadn't touched the tech, not one line. They couldn't have coded a login screen if you gave them a week and a walkthrough. At 4:29, I walked into conference room B with a folder in one hand and my laptop under the other. Melissa and Phil were already there, sitting tight and stiff. HR was across from them, half a smile on her face like she was ready to play neutral. George Whitaker, our CEO, walked in last. He didn't sit right away, just looked around the room and said, "Let's hear it." Phil jumped in like he'd been rehearsing. Brian deliberately withheld critical information from a client-facing pitch, resulting in confusion, lost confidence, and reputational risk. That was his opener, not even a pause. Melissa kept her eyes on the table. I waited. Let the silence hang for a beat. Then I set the folder on the table and said, "I built the solution. I withheld nothing. I made sure the answer had to come from the person who understood it." Phil scoffed. "That's semantics." I looked straight at George. The deck was missing the core logic because it required live context to make sense. I finalized the model the night before, and there wasn't time to teach anyone else. "Not true," Phil said, sitting forward. "You just wanted to play hero." I slid the first document across the table. Version log, time-stamped, with comments. Melissa was copied on every update. So were you, Phil. You just never opened them? Then I pulled out the second document. Code commits, all under my credentials. Full audit trail, third file. Meeting notes, Melissa called the telemetry gap the missing piece. That was me, not you, not Phil. I laid out one more. An internal memo draft that never got sent but had a full text summary attached. My initials, my formatting. No room for interpretation. George picked it up, skimmed the top page. Philippians, Melissa, any of this incorrect? Neither answered. HR cleared her throat. Carla Henley from Darren Freight followed up this afternoon. George looked at her. And? She was specific, HR said. She wants to continue communication directly with Mr. Tanner. That was the moment, right there. No shouting, no drama, just the truth, sitting in the middle of the table like a live wire. George looked at me. "Is this all documented?" "All of it," I said. He turned back to Phil. "Then explain to me again how he sabotaged anything." Phil's mouth opened. Nothing came out. George didn't wait. He stood up, looked at HRs, and said, "Set up a follow-up tomorrow." Just Brian and me. Then he walked out. Melissa still didn't look at me. Phil leaned back in his chair like the wind got knocked out of him. I packed my folder, nodded at HR, and walked out of that room like I'd just taken back something they thought I'd never fight for. The next morning, Carla's email landed at 8:17 a.m. Sharp, direct, and way more than I expected. Subject, conditional agreement, Darren Freight, X, Creighton Logistics Body. We're prepared to move forward under 3 conditions. Condition 1, I'd be named project lead in the actual contract, not internal messaging, legal language. Condition 2, all quarterly review meetings would be handled by me, no proxies. Condition 3, if Creighton failed to support the work or dragged their feet, Darren Freight reserved the right to bring me on independently. Contractor status, no fluff, no pleasantries. Carla didn't play around. I forwarded the email straight to George. No subject line, no message, just the terms. 3 minutes later, I got the reply. My office, 3 p.m. At 2:58, I stepped in. George was behind his desk, tapping a pen on a legal pad. A woman in a charcoal suit sat to his left, Creighton's legal rep. I'd seen her once before during an acquisition meeting. Sharp voice, unblinking. George motioned to the chair. "Close the door." I did. The legal rep got right to it. "We're concerned about the third clause. Allowing a client to potentially poach a key resource undermines the employer-employee relationship. I nodded. Or it holds you accountable, George cut in. Do you want to be a contractor, Brian? No, I said. I want what I've earned. Visibility, control, credit. He leaned back. You're asking us to put that in writing. I'm not asking, I said. Carla already did. The legal rep frowned. You're leveraging one contract for career leverage? I looked at her. I'm leveraging results. That clause exists because your leadership team fumbled a live pitch, and I cleaned it up in real time. They want to work with me because I got it done. Not because I asked George held up the printed email. You're telling me if we don't accept this, you'd leave? I didn't blink. You'd lose the deal either way. Silence. Then George dropped the pen and said, Okay. The legal rep turned toward him. George, he held up a hand. He's right. We got lucky this didn't go sideways. Let's not be stupid twice. He looked at me. You'll get a formal title, Director of Systems Engineering, effective immediately. You'll lead the Darren Freight rollout, and we'll attach a bonus clause. Percentage of revenue tied to performance milestones. I nodded once. Fair. The legal rep started typing. George stood, extended his hand. You fought for it. You got it. I shook his hand, firm. Now let me show you it wasn't a fluke. By the time I left that room, the power dynamic had flipped, and they knew it. That Monday, they packed everyone into the second-floor conference room, standing room only. Even the interns got pulled in. George took center stage like he was hosting a TED Talk. First thing out of his mouth, we've officially closed the $9.5 million Darren Freight contract. Applause, whistles. A few people actually cheered. Then he said my name. And the technical backbone of this entire deal, Brian Tanner, now our Director of Systems Engineering. I didn't move, just stood off to the right, arms crossed, watching it all. Phil was in the front row. I watched his jaw tighten as George laid it out. How we'd found the gaps, rebuilt the model, delivered the win. He never once said team effort. He said my name, 5 times. Melissa was off to the left, clapping soft, half-hearted. She didn't meet my eyes once. Afterward, the crowd broke up slow. People were buzzing, shaking hands, grabbing coffee. George nodded to me once, then disappeared. Phil made his move like he couldn't help himself. He came in close. Low voice, no smile. You played your hand. Just know, this company remembers things. I didn't flinch. So do I. I leaned in just enough for him to hear the rest. And unlike you, I keep records. He didn't reply, just turned and walked out like a man who finally realized the game had changed. That afternoon, I sent my first internal memo as director. Simple, direct, and copied to every team lead. Subject: Project Credit. Audit Body. All past and active projects will be reviewed for contribution accuracy. Updates to recognition, promotion, priority, and bonus eligibility will follow. No exceptions. No more shadow credits. No more quiet theft. If you did the work, your name went on the board. Rage from analytics got bumped to senior. Oteva from data. Keu. A finally had her name attached to the modeling she'd supported for 2 years. Dylan in implementation, quiet guy, sharp thinker, got pulled into 2 new build-outs with direct client exposure. We weren't playing favorites. We were fixing the balance. The people in the background, I brought them forward. I didn't need applause. I didn't want speeches, just clean lines. And for the first time since I walked into that building, I had the authority to draw them myself. 6 months in, the results spoke for themselves. Darren Freight's numbers came back up. 6.5% savings above projection. Not just hitting the target, beating it. Carla sent the invite personally. Lunch at their HQ, downtown Chicago. No agenda. Just, let's talk. We sat across from each other at a window table overlooking the river. She didn't do small talk. Opened with, "You've delivered exactly what you promised." I nodded once. "We don't pitch fiction." She cracked a smile at that. "You're not what I expected, Tanner." "I get that a lot." She raised her glass but didn't toast. Just said, "Keep running your team like this and you'll never have to chase clients again. They'll find you." And they did. I'd built something real, Tight, clean, fast. Raj handled data streamlining like he'd been born for it. Ava rebuilt our QA protocols from the ground up. Dylan took over on-site deployments and turned chaos into clean implementation plans. None of them had titles that matched their talent when I pulled them in. Didn't matter, I gave them the space. They delivered. We met with clients directly. No VP sitting in to translate. No PowerPoint dance. We walked in, showed what we knew, answered straight, and walked out with contracts. The new rule was simple. Do the work, own the result. Melissa kept her distance, still smiled in meetings. Still stayed 5 steps outside the spotlight, like she might find her way back into it if she played long enough. Phil had been reassigned. Official memo said strategic planning. I didn't ask questions. No one else did either. When 2 new clients, both regional carriers with national growth plans, reached out asking for me by name, I brought the files straight to George. Both want full infrastructure audits. They're ready to pay consultant rates. He didn't blink. Land them, and I'll greenlight anything you need. I walked out with budget clearance and 2 open headcount approvals. By the end of that quarter, we'd signed both. I brought Ava into the lead architect role. Raj got his own team. Dylan started mentoring the new hires. No performance theater. Just results. I didn't need the job to feel like a family. I wasn't building a clubhouse. I was building a machine. Efficient, honest, exact. You pulled weight, you moved up. You coasted, you got left behind. One afternoon, Ava walked into my office with a question about a new rollout plan, paused halfway through and said, "It's weird finally having a boss who gives a damn." I looked up from my screen. "I'm not a boss. I'm a builder," she grinned. "Even better." That night I sat alone at my desk after everyone else left. Quiet floor, city lights out the window. I didn't feel pride, I felt clarity. I'd stopped chasing validation, stopped waiting to be invited in. I'd made my own seat, and now people were asking me for room at the table. That night, I sat in the garage with the door half open, feet up on an old cooler, beer sweating in my hand. I had the Darren freight binder in my lap, version logs, scribbled notes, a folded diagram with sync intervals written in Sharpie. One missing algorithm. That's all it took. Not because I tricked anyone, not because I played dirty, because it forced the truth to the surface. And the truth was, I'd been carrying that project on my back while they smiled in meetings and signed their names on the cover sheet. I wasn't out for revenge. I didn't need to burn the place down. So I stopped asking, stopped waiting, stopped pretending the rules were real. They weren't. The game they were playing? I stopped trying to win it and rewrote the rules instead. Now, I mentor the new hires, mostly guys in their 30s, sharp, tired, talented, who've been told to wait their turn by managers who haven't written a line of real work in years. I tell them 3 things. Document everything. Speak up when it matters. And don't let anyone wear your work like it's theirs. Most of them nod along. A few don't believe me, yet. That's fine. They'll learn. Carla's business card still sits in the back of my desk drawer, tucked behind a flash drive with the original algorithm on it. She never pressed the offer. I never used it. But knowing it was there, that gave me the spine to stand up and stay standing. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd just let it go. If I'd stayed quiet, let Phil and Melissa keep smiling for the camera while I cranked out the real work in the background. I'll tell you what would have happened. Nothing. Same cycle, same silence, same grind. That's why I did what I did. Not for the win, for the shift. Because when you change the rules, you don't just take back your power. You make sure they can't take it from the next guy either. So if you're out there and they're trying to keep you small, listen, you don't need revenge. You need one good moment of clarity. One clean shot. I took mine, and I'm not giving it back.